He knew death was coming for him. In March 1964, Malcolm X stood by his window, gripping an M1 carbine, watching for the men who vowed to silence him. After exposing Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad for fathering children with underage girls, Malcolm became a target, betrayed by the very movement he once led. Life magazine captured this haunting image, a man dressed in dignity, trapped between ideals and assassins. Less than a year later, he would be gunned down. This photo freezes the moment when truth became more dangerous than any bullet. In a world consumed by hate, one veil became a shield. Sarajevo, 1941. While Jews were forced to wear the yellow star, marking them for persecution, a Muslim woman quietly defied the Nazis. She draped her veil over her Jewish neighbor, hiding the star that could mean death. It was an act of courage, of solidarity, of humanity in a time when both were dangerous. This single gesture reminds us, even in the darkest moments of history, compassion could burn brighter than fear. The city that once dreamed of ruling the world now lay in ashes. Berlin, July 1945. Its grand boulevards reduced to rubble, its buildings shattered, its streets scarred by the weight of war. Just weeks earlier, this was the heart of the Nazi regime. Now, it stood as a graveyard of ambition, silence replacing the thunder of bombs. Among the ruins, survivors walked cautiously, haunted by loss, searching for food, for family, for a future. This was the cost of war, a city broken, a world forever changed. In 1963, it sounded like pure science fiction, a phone you could carry in your pocket. Newspapers mocked it as an idea far in the future. Yet here, Mrs. Jean Conrad proudly held a prototype, a glimpse of a world no one believed was coming so soon. People laughed, doubted, and dismissed it as fantasy. But just decades later, this impossible dream reshaped humanity. Today, billions live with that very device in their hands, proof that yesterday's impossibility can become tomorrow's necessity. A single handshake that fooled the world. In September 1938, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain clasped Adolf Hitler's hand, convinced he had secured peace for our time. What looked like relief was, in truth, the calm before the storm. Within a year, Hitler shattered his promises, plunging Europe into the deadliest war in history. This moment remains a haunting reminder of how appeasement can disguise danger, and how one handshake can echo across generations. Imagine waiting in line, and instead of tapping a card or swiping a phone, the shopper pulls out a pen. In the 1970s, paying for groceries with a check was the norm, long before debit cards, Apple Pay, or self-checkout lanes. Every purchase meant handwriting your details, showing ID, and waiting for approval. This photo captures a time when grocery lines moved slower, but the ritual of shopping felt more personal, almost ceremonial, in a world just beginning to dream of faster convenience. You've never seen Michael Jackson like this. In 1988, at the height of his fame, the king of pop was larger than life. Glitter gloves, sequin jackets, and unforgettable stage performances. But this rare photo strips away the spectacle, showing him without makeup, smiling casually with a newspaper in hand. It's a glimpse of the man behind the legend, reminding us that even global icons have quiet, unguarded moments. For fans who only knew the performer on stage, this image is both startling and deeply human. Fear, prejudice, and survival, this image says it all. In the 1940s, during World War II, anti-Japanese sentiment in America ran so high that even Chinese Americans were harassed, threatened, and attacked. To protect himself, this worker wore a crude sign on his back, "Me Chinese, please. No Jap." It's a heartbreaking reminder of how war fueled suspicion and racism, forcing innocent people to publicly prove their identity just to feel safe. History often repeats, and this photograph exposes the heavy cost of fear and ignorance. In a world that demanded perfection, this photograph defied cruelty. Princess Alexandrine Irene of Prussia, born in 1915 with Down syndrome, could have been hidden away, erased from history, as was often the fate of children like her. But her family did the unthinkable. They loved her openly, educated her, and allowed her to be seen. In an era obsessed with bloodlines and appearances, Alexandrine's life stands as a rare story of dignity and acceptance. This portrait is more than royal history. It's a quiet act of resistance against stigma. A single image can scream louder than words. In Karamoja, Uganda, 1980, a Catholic missionary holds the fragile hand of a starving boy. The contrast is brutal, one hand full of strength, the other reduced to skin and bone. This photograph captures more than hunger. It reveals the staggering gap between survival and collapse. At the height of famine, thousands faced death in silence, their suffering often unseen by the world. Yet here, in this moment, compassion meets despair, and history leaves us a haunting reminder of how close humanity can stand to both life and loss. When the summer heat turned apartments into ovens, survival meant creativity. In New York, 1948, families carried their mattresses on fire escapes, turning iron railings into bedrooms under the open sky. This haunting photo shows two people asleep, clinging to a breeze as their only relief. It wasn't luxury, just desperation in a city without widespread air conditioning. One wrong move could mean tragedy, yet thousands risked it night after night. This is how ordinary New Yorkers endured the suffocating summers, by trading safety for a breath of cool air. He wasn't just defiant, he was untouchable. In 1957, Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa sat before Robert Kennedy at the Senate hearings and, with cameras rolling, gave him the ultimate insult. A brazen middle finger disguised as a casual gesture. Hoffa was the most powerful labor leader in America, accused of corruption, mob ties, and embezzlement, but he acted as if the law couldn't touch him. This infamous moment captured his arrogance and his war with the Kennedys, a feud that would define his career. Less than 2 decades later, Hoffa vanished without a trace. His fate still one of America's greatest mysteries. He begged, he shouted, he raised his fists, but nothing could erase his betrayal. In August 1945, Pierre Laval, former Prime Minister of Vichy France, stood in the Palais de Justice accused of treason. Once a powerful leader who collaborated with Nazi Germany, Laval now faced a courtroom filled with anger and contempt. His desperate pleas could not outweigh the evidence. Aiding the enemy, sending French citizens to their deaths, and betraying his own nation. Found guilty, he was sentenced to death and executed in October. This image captures the final, futile fight of a man condemned by history. It looks like an illusion, her body and head completely separated. But this surreal image is pure photography, not trickery. In 1962, photographer George Silk captured Kathy Flicker spitting a stream of water in a swimming pool. The refraction of light split her head from her body, creating an eerie, almost supernatural effect that stunned viewers. At a time when Photoshop didn't exist, this shot proved the raw power of timing, science, and the human eye. A simple swim turned into one of the most unforgettable optical illusions of the 20th century. Before glossy gyms and polished machines, strength was forged with raw iron and pure will. In 1920s Iran, this amateur bodybuilder posed proudly with his homemade weights, crafted from whatever materials he could find. No trainers, no supplements, just discipline and tradition. His body reflects resilience, a symbol of how determination can shape greatness even without modern tools. Each rep wasn't just training, it was defiance against limitation. A reminder that strength doesn't come from equipment, but from the human spirit that refuses to break. Chains that tell a story too dark to ignore. In 1950s Algeria, a French colonial soldier drags two men bound together, their dignity stripped but their defiance unbroken. This image isn't just about war. It's about the crushing weight of colonialism and the human cost behind it. Every chain, every step, was a reminder of a people fighting for freedom in their own land. A haunting scene that forces us to confront a painful truth. Empires may rise with force, but resistance is born in the hearts of the oppressed. Before neon lights and steel giants, joy was carved out of wood and rope. In 1924 Albania, children lined up for a ride on this handmade Ferris wheel, powered not by electricity, but by sheer human effort and imagination. Every creak of the timber, every laugh from the baskets, tells a story of simpler times, where wonder didn't need technology, only community. This rustic ride may look fragile to us today, but to those children, it was pure magic. A snapshot of how, even in hardship, people always found a way to rise above the ground and touch a little piece of happiness. Behind the barbed wire, 6 faces stare out, young, weary, but alive. These are Soviet soldiers, finally freed by the U.S. Army from a German prison camp in France, 1944. Their uniforms are tattered, their eyes hollowed by hunger and captivity, yet there's a spark, relief, disbelief, maybe even hope. For years they endured chains and cruelty, uncertain if they'd ever walk free again. And in this single frame, history captures not just their survival, but the fragile triumph of humanity over the darkest machinery of war. A haunting reminder that liberation doesn't erase suffering, it only begins the healing. Rows of children stand in silence, their faces hidden behind gas masks, an image that looks more like a nightmare than a classroom. This was Czechoslovakia in May 1938, as Nazi Germany's shadow grew darker across Europe. These students weren't rehearsing for a game or a parade. They were preparing for survival. Air raid drills became routine, a chilling reminder that war could fall from the sky at any moment. For these young lives, childhood innocence was stolen by the looming fear of bombs and invasion. One haunting photo, frozen in time, that shows how even the youngest were forced to breathe through fear.